The classic Spider-Man game that many consider to be a cult classic. The game was released on the PlayStation 1 and was later ported to other consoles, such as the N64 and the Sega Dreamcast. This is one of my childhood games because back then I used to play this game countless times. It's a very easy game to get into, usually lasting around the 2 to 3 hour mark. Before we get into the game itself, however, let's start with the plot. The game opens up with Dr. Otto Octavius in a science expo declaring to everybody that he is reformed and will now use his technology to benefit mankind. Peter Parker and Eddie Brock are both seen in the crowd, the latter taking pictures for his career. However, an imposter Spider-Man comes on the stage and steals Octavius' technology. He also manages to break Eddie's camera, causing him to let Venom take over his body, swearing revenge against Jameson and Spider-Man. Meanwhile, Dr. Octopus and Carnage are both seen in their base with the machine that was stolen, and they end up engulfing the entire city in fog. Black Cat shows up and tells Spider-Man that the bank has been robbed, and the thieves have hostages that need to be rescued. After the bank is saved, J. Jonah Jameson is in a rough situation with Scorpion, who wants revenge for Jameson putting him in this suit. After taking Scorpion out, the police get on Spider-Man's tail, providing for a very intense and exciting chase sequence. Not long after, Black Cat tells Spider-Man about technology at Omnitech being stolen, and Venom ranting on the biggest screen in New York, saying that he has taken Mary Jane prisoner and he is waiting for Spider-Man to go and rescue her. Rhino is found at Omnitech and takes Black Cat out with minimal effort. He gets taken out by Spidey, with Doc Ock coming on the scene to take him away. Spidey then proceeds to find Mary Jane with Venom right on his back. After chasing him down, you end up fighting in an enclosed alleyway of sorts, after which Venom goes down into the sewers with you taking pursuit. Eventually, after finding Venom and Mary Jane, Spidey proves to Eddie that he wasn't the one who stole the technology, and the two of them try working out who could have stolen it. This provides for some very humorous comments by Venom, mentioning people like Galactus and the Mighty Four. They ultimately end up back at the Bugle where Venom starts sensing Carnage, going on his search for him. Spidey then finds out that the entire Bugle has been infested with symbiotes and goes down into the basement to investigate. You end up finding Spider-Man's doppelganger, who then reveals himself to be Mysterio. After turning huge and an incredibly frustrating boss fight, he tells Spider-Man that the fog was to prepare everyone for symbiosis. The symbiotes weren't only in the Bugle, they are also found in Warehouse 65, which is also the headquarters of the villains. You find Black Cat, save her, and end up stopping the fog at the same time. Not surprisingly, you find out that the villains behind all this were Dr. Octopus and Carnage. Venom shows up, ready to take on Carnage, while Spidey and Doc Ock duke it out. Venom gets taken out by Carnage, getting ready to deal with Spidey too. You take Carnage out in what I feel to be one of the easiest bosses in the game, with the Carnage symbiote going down into Doc Ock, resulting in a symbiote Doc Ock, or Monster Ock as the game calls it. This part of the game is really intense. You are escaping the headquarters with Ock right behind you, and if he catches up, there's nothing you can do. You're straight out dead. Everyone who played this game as a kid will tell you that this part of the game creeped them out a lot, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't one of them. The tension is really high on this section, and it makes for a very climactic finale to the game. After you manage to escape, Monster Rock gets caught in an explosion, making the symbiote escape the host's body, leaving an unconscious Dr. Octopus behind. He gets put into prison with the rest of the villains of the game, while Spider-Man and other superheroes play Go Fish, ending the game. Overall, the story of this game is very straightforward and basic. The story flows well in sync with the gameplay. It's slightly weird that nobody's mouth moves except for maybe Venom and Carnage, although it isn't too hard to get used to. The plot twists seen near at the end of the game aren't too surprising, especially with the antagonists, but it doesn't hinder the experience. The story really isn't anything to write home about, but it gets the job done well enough, and you can tell the guys at Neversoft had a lot of fun writing it. You're probably expecting this game to be a non-linear adventure game, a lot like the Spider-Man movie games. Hell, the back of the box pretty much tells a lie, saying, "Totally free-roaming New York," which is pretty humorous, but no. This game is very much a linear-styled game. For the most part, you have a set destination to go to, and you often don't explore a whole lot. Now, that's not to say exploration is completely in the void, however. The game does have these hidden areas that contain Spidey armor, health upgrades, and web cartridges, but more on the webs later. You can also find comics. Some of these can be found in hard to locate places, and others aren't that hard to find at all. They really expect you to think outside the box with some of these. A lot of comics only appear when you do certain things, like pick up a certain chair in the bank level or destroy every object in the Rhino stage. Comics don't do a whole lot in general, though they are kinda fun to find and collect, and you can see them on the menu. You can't read the full comics unfortunately, but rather a brief description of it. Either way, they are a fun little collectible. Speaking of collectibles, the web cartridges I mentioned earlier are these blue coloured items the shape of a health pickup. These do what you'd expect them to. They increase how much you can use your web. You can hold 10 of them at once. Before we get into web attacks though, let's talk about the combat. Now don't expect Arkham City or Shattered Dimensions level of combat, as it is very simple in this game. Not that it's a bad thing, mind you. Square activates punches and circle is used to kick. These attacks are always done in a 3-hit combo, so always keep in mind to press the button 3 times in a row if you want the full attack. You can also combine punches and kicks, but it isn't anything fancy. Now the web attacks are something else entirely. By simply holding triangle near an enemy, you web them up and they die for some reason. Other enemies like bosses and the symbiotes though shrug off the attack. R2 activates your trademark web swinging technique. Jumping before swinging is highly recommended, as doing it on the ground causes you to do this really awkward animation. That and the way the web is programmed is to lock onto the nearest building. This can be annoying as you don't know how to get around it, which is why I recommend jumping before swinging. You also have a few other web attacks in your arsenal. By pressing R1 you zip line up to the ceiling and can crawl around like a spider can. This is the best to use in the bank level, as you need to sneak around if you don't want a hostage to end up dying. Another move is the web ball attack. By pressing up and triangle simultaneously, you shoot a web ball. This can be very useful when taking out enemies from afar, and it's effective on a lot of bosses too. Hell, Mysterious Fight is centered around the mechanic. One move I never used except for maybe one time is a targeting technique. It basically targets where you want to swing or shoot web. Aside from one section in the sewers, I really don't see much of a use for this. There are 3 other web attacks. By pressing triangle and left or right, you activate some kind of web gloves. These increase strength from punches for a short period of time. I don't recommend abusing this though, as it uses up quite a bit of a cartridge. Also, doing any other web attack in this state will instantly cancel it. The other 2 attacks are a web dome that protects you from all attacks and activates a blast, though this uses up one whole cartridge, so don't abuse it. And the other move is tossing enemies with the web. To do this you have to press triangle to grab an enemy with web, and quickly press one of the directional buttons. I don't recommend using this though, as it doesn't usually work and is very finicky to do. Though it works surprisingly well in the subway sequence for some strange reason. As far as other moves, well, you can climb on buildings as you would expect, and the controls when climbing work great generally. Something else you can do is grab and throw objects by pressing square. I don't use this an awful lot though, as a lot of the time Spidey doesn't attack rather than pick up the object. I feel if the grab was mapped to another button, this wouldn't be an issue. The game is split into 6 different segments, all starting with a nice comic cover. The game really isn't very long and can easily be beaten in a single playthrough, but it's a good time playing throughout, with some flaws here and there, but they don't overall hinder my experience in the slightest. The music in this game really sets the mood of you being Spider-Man, and complements the stages as well. Take a listen to the bank and the sewer stages, for instance. There are a few other things found in the menu. You can use different costumes like the symbiote suit, which allows you to use infinite web, which is freaking awesome! You also have a training mode,
and you can see how many enemies you can kill until you die, or how many tokens you can get until the timer runs out. This mode is really nothing special though. You also have a cheat code system, which I'm assuming is used to unlock the other costumes. It can also be used to activate a special mode in the game. By putting in a specific code, you unlock a special what if mode. I don't show it in this review simply because it is something to experience on your own. This mode is definitely worth a second playthrough. Overall, Spider-Man for the PS1 is a fun ride from start to finish. Minus some flaws like the camera sometimes, and picking up objects and flinging enemies with web being finicky, it's still an overall enjoyable experience. If you haven't played this game already, I highly recommend picking it up. You might be pleasantly surprised. Of course, you can't please everyone, but I at least think you should give it a shot. Anyways, with that said, next time we will be taking a look at Sonic Lost World for the Wii U. I have quite a bit to say about this game in particular, so until then, have a great day. Oh, and no, I'm not rating the reviews. I find that setup really overused and I'd rather just let the review speak for itself.